Hi there, welcome back to my A to Z video series on topics to do with pregnancy and perinatal mental health. My name is Dr. Erin Bao and I'm a clinical and perinatal psychologist and a childbirth educator, and I teach hypnobirthing. So today we are up to the letter N, and I want to talk to you about this concept of no such thing as a normal birth. It's a phrase I kind of keep hearing every now and then, and I have doubts as to whether it's actually a useful kind of way to talk about birth, as if there's any normal birth. It means different things for different people, of course, but I think it's sometimes one of those things that creeps into terminology that can make people who are pregnant and are having whatever birth they want feel like there's some sort of expectation or standard for what is okay and what's not okay, which isn't what you want. So if I think back to my pregnancy with my first daughter, I remember someone talking to me about, oh, you know, what are your plans for delivery and all that kind of stuff, as they do. And they said, oh, so are you going to do a normal birth? And I remember thinking, like, what? What's a normal birth? But maybe in that context they meant more like natural birth, which is a phrase that's also used quite a lot, and it's also not ideal, really. I mean, the preferred term that we're moving towards now is physiological birth, and I think that's a better term for, I guess, maybe what we mean as unassisted vaginal delivery. It's a shortened way of saying that, but I think normal and natural, particularly normal, are two words that I just think that they're not useful for people. So if you think about every kind of birth that there is, they're all normal, because birth in itself is normal. There might be things about it that feel that they weren't your choice or not what you wanted, or maybe sometimes, as I use the phrasing, like not your optimal birth that you wanted, but it doesn't mean it wasn't normal. And even when I'm teaching hypnobirthing, sometimes people will contact me and say, oh, I've read about this hypnobirthing and I'm interested in it, but isn't it just for normal birth, or isn't it just for natural birth? And no, absolutely it's not. It emphasises, I suppose, more of what you might phrase as a natural approach, as in one that says, okay, rather than using a more kind of medical first line treatment where you use drugs and interventions and things like that that are not optimal for mum and baby's physical and mental health, but it still very much acknowledges that those experiences, so whether you choose to have a caesarean or whether you have an emergency caesarean, whether you choose to be induced or whether you end up having an induction for medical purposes or whatever, it is your choice, and they're all normal choices. You might sort of feel, you know, some women are feeling really, really ostracized now, I think, because maybe, you know, they've gotten pregnant via IVF, and so there's the, oh, well, that's not natural. And then there's the, oh, well, you're high risk, so maybe you need a caesarean, and that's not a natural birth. But they can be, and hypnobirthing is perfectly aligned with those procedures. I mean, Hypnobirthing Australia even has a positive caesarean birth course that's just for caesarean, and there's no kind of judgment or negativity around what kind of birth you have. The main thing is about, it's more like optimal birth, I think, like what for you as a birthing woman is your preference, what's the best thing we can do, and use the best positive language to get you the outcome that you want. I don't think we should be saying to women that their experiences were not natural or not normal. It's unfair. And I mean, there's even in, I guess, what you might call unassisted physiological vaginal births, which is a lot to say, there are things about that that some people would say are not normal, whatever that means. You know, it might be the mental state that you're in at the time. It might be the positioning that you used was not the average positioning. It might be, you know, the things that you said during labour were not kind of average, typical experiences, but that's how it should be. It should be an individualized process, because that's what makes for good birth stories as well. Like, we don't just want, I suppose maybe how it used to be, like in the kind of twilight era that we sometimes talk about, where, you know, women were rolled into hospital, they were knocked out with drugs, they weren't even really conscious. You know, a baby was removed as if they were having a surgical procedure, and then you see these photos of women lined up in hospital beds, all lined up together, all tucked up in bed, completely off their face, don't know where they are, and there's no babies because the babies have been moved off into a separate baby unit. So we don't want this kind of, like, I guess, pod people idea of pregnancy should just be this, like, standardized process, you know, like as if you've opened up your med textbook and it's like step 1, do this, step 2, do this. It should be the weird, the wonderful, the uncanny, the average. It should be everything. So please don't stress about the idea of what is a normal birth or what is a natural birth. There's quirks and quandaries to every single birth, and that's what makes them unique. The most important thing, as I said, is making it positive, making it so that women are feeling confident and calm, and even I suppose enthusiastic, if that's like even a thing that you can get your head around, that you can have exactly the kind of birth that you want. And even if it's not the kind of birth that you optimally wanted, was your first choice, there's support and ways to cope with it. It doesn't have to be something that you have to accept if something isn't the way that you wanted it to be. So I guess part of what I'm saying there is, if you feel that there were things about your birth and about your pregnancy that were abnormal and that you're not happy with, you don't have to just accept it and go, well, I've got a healthy baby, just suck it up and get on with it. There's ways to explore that, but in a way, again, that normalizes the process and doesn't make you feel like you're some sort of weak freak person for not being able to cope with whatever happened to you at your birth that you're not happy with. So I guess my point, as I'm getting to, is it's about what you want, how you feel about things, and being given the space to use whatever language you want, to do whatever you want, and not feel afraid. Okay. If you want to learn more about pregnancy, perinatal mental health, birth trauma, those kinds of things, you can find me at drerin.com.au, and I'll also put links below for Instagram and Facebook and all those kinds of things as well. Alright, I'll talk to you next time. Bye.